evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old pal Virgil, welcoming you back once again for another episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture, joined as always by my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, who is a little under the weather today. Forgive him. Mark, how are you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling very Brenda Vaccaro today. How are you?
The gruff voice really does work for the podcast.
Yeah, I'm in sultry mode.
Yes, absolutely. And we are in road show mode as we hit the road once again with the Mahoning Drive-In Road Show, which takes our love of the drive-in culture and our push for the preservation of 35 millimeter on the road to a town near you. And we've been having a really great time as this has relaunched. And one of our favorite places to stop on the road show is the Union County Performing Arts Center in Rahway, New Jersey, who has such a beautiful, beautiful show place there. And every time we visit them, it is a blast. And we are so lucky today to be joined by their 35 millimeter projectionist, Mr. Mark Pusillo. Welcome, my friend.
How are you? Hello. How's everybody?
You know, we're doing good. This is the rev up for the season. You know, now that it's looking forward to some warmer weather, I think we're all going to start feeling that drive-in itch.
Especially after yesterday where we got plastered with 28 inches over here. It's like...
it's ridiculous.
Oh, I can't wait for some... I just want some 50-degree days to melt it all away already.
I know, it's so true. It's so hard because I'm always telling the crew, hey, we're going to get on the lot early and do some work early. And then I'm like, we can't even get on the lot because once we get through a snow, another snow comes and you can't even drive in there. But
it's crazy. But I'm glad to be with you guys tonight. Sorry, I'm under the weather a little bit, but I got to say, I love the gruffy voice.
Thank you. It does. It works. It works. If we need any like trailer readings or things like that, we can drop Mark.
At last, my career working a 900 number for fans of Lauren McCall.
Call Mark.
Is that Michael Gazzo, that super gruff voiced guy in The Godfather?
Yes. Well, Mark, we're going to talk a little bit about the life of a 35 millimeter projectionist, a bit about your background, and really kind of get a feel and an idea for how one becomes a 35 millimeter projectionist, which we have an owner-operators series, which is focused on interviews with owners of drive-ins, and it very much shines a light on that question of how does one operate a drive-in, become a drive-in owner, and it's been a great series for us, but I love spreading the wings now and hitting our specific beloved format with 35 millimeter projectionists. So you're a second generation projectionist, am I right?
Yes, I am. My father was a projectionist for 55 years.
Oh God, it's literally in your blood. Can you give us a little bit of history? That's a great place to start. A little history of your father and kind of his backstory with 35 millimeter and how it influenced you to get into it.
Sure. Well, you know, growing up as a little boy, I remember we used to go see my grandfather, and my grandfather lived a block away from a theater in Carteret, New Jersey, was called the Ritz Theater.
Yeah.
And that was where my father got his start. And he worked there up until it closed in 1965. Now, I had never been to the Ritz Theater. I got into it just before it was being torn down. But of course, you know, that's another story for another day. But my father worked between there and then a theater in Woodbridge, New Jersey called the State Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in 1966, the day after Thanksgiving, that'd be Black Friday, my father had to go do a matinee at the State Theater in Woodbridge. And he was going to run a movie called The Christmas That Almost Wasn't.
Yes.
And he said to me, he says, "You want to come?" And I said, "Oh, sure." I'm 7 years old, right? So I go up into the projection room, and the first thing I see are the big projectors with the big carbon arc lamp houses. I didn't even know what they were. I just knew they were big.
Yeah.
And Dad takes me into the back room, and there's these three units on the floor that look like jet engines, on an airplane, big round thing. So he says to me, he goes, "Grab that switch and push it up." It's one of those, those knife switches.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm 7 years old. I can't. So Dad helps me, and I push this switch up, and these things start going like. And here I am.
Come to life.
I'm 7 years old. I want to run out of the room, Anyway, so that was the first time I ever went with my father. I sat and watched the movie, which I will say here and now is one of my favorite movies. First movie I ever saw in a theater.
Yeah, come on, that'll stick with you.
And then after that, I started going with Dad, watching him and everything. And he was showing me, he says, "Now you see, this is this, and this is, just showing me basic things." Again, I'm 7, 8 years old. I'm taking it all in, but, I was more mesmerized than anything else.
Oh, yeah. There's something about theater life. I'm raising my munchkin, who ironically is right around that age. He's 8 now.
Right.
You get to kind of live through the magic, the first time magic through their eyes, which I'm sure was the case with your pop as well.
Right. And then, after a while, after I'd go with him for a while and everything, he would have some old scrap film up in the booth at the State Theater. And he would let me, well, now everything is done with tape splicers, but I used to use cement splicers back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
You had to, cut one frame extra and scrape and do all that. And he would let me play around with some scrap film and do that and everything, So as time went on, I just kept going with him and taking an interest in it, like I didn't know at that time if I wanted to ever do it, but I just took an interest in it.
Yeah.
And so then the State Theater, unfortunately, had closed in 1971 with the movie Dr. Dolittle, which I did go with him on the matinee to see the last time, just before it closed.
Yeah.
So then Dad went down to the Royal Theater in Perth Amboy, and right around the corner from the Royal was the Majestic Theater in Perth Amboy, which was an adult movie theater. The Royal was a Spanish house, and my uncle was a projectionist at the Majestic. So the two of them would go carpool when they had to work and everything else.
Wow.
Yeah. It says, the theaters were right. In fact, the corners of the theaters butted, and one theater this way, like an L. They butted in the back. So they worked there for about a year or so, and then in June of 1972, they both left to go to the brand new Jerry Lewis Twin Cinema in Carteret that opened up, and that was where I started cutting my teeth in projection.
Yeah, how old would you have been then?
1972, I'd be 13 years old.
Oh, that's
wow.
Perfect.
Now, myself being a giant Jerry Lewis fan, I've always been fascinated by the whole Jerry Lewis Cinemas thing. Can you explain how that theater worked and constructed? Because I know for its day, it was pretty unique.
Yeah, sure. My dad was always going by. It was in a shopping center, and my dad would always go down there to see how it was going and all. And because Dad was secretary of the union, of the Projectionist Union.
Wow,
so he had some clout, whatever you want to call it. But, we watched the theater being built. I actually loved it. I got to say, it was built cheap. I mean, it was just, four walls of cement block with a cement block wall down the middle, nothing fancy, drapes on the wall. It was really simple, but I loved the theaters. Each house had 300 seats. There was, the screens were wall to wall. It was not, it's the first theater I ever worked in. Okay. And, so Dad would let me, Dad and my uncle would let me thread up. The only problem I had at the time was getting those 6,000-foot reels, into the film magazine, because they still had magazines with the doors that closed and everything else, so there wasn't a lot of finger room. And of course I wasn't strong enough to lift, 3 reels onto a thing, but they would let me thread up, and, I started getting the hang of it, getting it in frame and doing, and the theaters were automated. So, once you push start, the lights would go down, the curtain would open up, it would make automatic changeovers. So there wasn't really much to do, but I learned how to thread.
Yeah,
So
that was the big thing with the Jerry Lewis theaters, right? Was that it was big on automation and top of
yeah.
the line and franchised out, popped up everywhere, right?
Right. So, this one, a lot of them were not unionized, because that was the whole idea. It was like one or two people could operate it.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
But this one was a twin, and we had a manager who, his family worked behind a concession stand. In fact, I remember when I turned 14 in 1973, the manager actually hired me to work weekends behind the concession stand and stuff,
Nice.
And I remember you're gonna love this one. I was getting $1.96 an hour. That was the minimum wage.
But it was everything then, right? It didn't matter.
I was like, oh my God, but I was so happy. At the end of the weekend, I'd get like $10 in cash, for working the week. And I was like, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world,
On top of the world, baby. Look at me, Ma.
So, time went on. And then I finished junior year in college in 1976, June, beginning of June. I went to a Catholic high school. So the beginning of June, we were done. And, Dad said to me, he goes, you've been threading up now for a while. He goes, you're 17. He says, do you want to apprentice to join the union?
Oh, it's time, young Padawan.
Yeah. So I did, I said, yeah, okay. So, they would let me work some, like Friday nights or something. If they didn't want to go in, my father or my uncle, they didn't want to go in. They let me work. In fact, I'll tell you a real quick, funny story. The first movie I ever ran for a crowd, because my father was like, every time I would thread up or something, my father was there. Or if I went there, my uncle, he'd take me and I'd stay with my uncle Nick. And I would just thread up, but they would always be there. Then they came up and they said, well, you're going to have to get your confidence to work on your own with a crowd of people.
Yeah.
So the theater used to do every year a benefit for the town firemen, the company. So they had a benefit set up for the Carteret Fire Department. They got the movie The Graduate, which again, I think I told you the story when we met at the theater, but my father said, you're going to run the benefit. No one's going to be there. You're on your own. You mess it up, it's on you. Okay. Yeah. So the movie was The Graduate. So there's a picture of me on Facebook in front of the theater.
That's right. Yes.
And that was the day I ran the benefit. I ran it all by myself, threaded it up. It made the changeover, did everything. That was the first movie I ever ran by myself.
Wow. Cutting the teeth.
For a benefit.
I love that your dad took the time with you and
he was very, I have to say, I grew up in the 70s and I had the long hair down to the shoulders, I was a typical 70s, but he was proud of me. Either way, he was proud of me. Didn't always like the long hair and things like that.
Well, it's a good place for me to ask, being that was your first time. I grew up on a stage, singing, acting, all that stuff. And there's a bit of performance anxiety that comes along with that. As a projectionist, is that just always there or something that you kind of ride through and find a way to ride through?
Let me tell you something. One thing my father and my uncle instilled in me, and I'm sure you guys do it at the drive-in, is they always said to me, when you thread up, you double check, you triple check, you quadruple check, you check that thing 6, 7, 8 times. Make sure everything is on the sprockets. That the gate is everything is perfect, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was doing it, and I got to tell you, when I went to push that start button, I just got like a hot flash. I was sweating, I was shaking. I mean, if I was there with Dad or Uncle Nick, and something went wrong, I'd be like, "Oh, help me!" They would be there, but there was no there. This was all on me, and there was 300 people in the theater. Okay, the theater.
It all rides on you. It's all on your shoulders. Yeah.
I mean, the anxiety was like, oh my God. And I'll tell you, as we go further into my history, I'll tell you, there's another time I had anxiety too. So anyway, the benefit ran fine, no problem. So then my father says to me, he goes, I'm going to take your mother out a couple weeks from now on a Friday night. I want you to work. Okay. Now this is for a paid credit. This is for real people. You know,
No benefit stuff. Yeah.
Benefit was one thing. If something happened to benefit, it's not a big deal. But this was the real deal.
Right.
So the movie was Carrie, 1976 Carrie.
Yeah, which we're playing this year for our horror prom.
Right.
Great.
I saw that.
movie.
So I'm sure you've seen it, right? You're familiar with it. Okay. So there I am. The one thing about the theater was the regular house lights, like the intermission lights, they came up with the automation. But there was a second set of lights that you could bring up when the credits would start to allow the crowd to get out. So here's Mark. I'm in the window watching, the end, I could see the film running out of the reel. So I says, well, I better get up, stand by the window and wait to raise the lights, right? Because it was a Friday night and it was almost sold out. Carrie, it was almost sold. So here I am. I'm standing there waiting to put the lights, and I see the house is thing, and what's her name?
Pushing.
Amy Irving is going there with the flowers, and she's putting the flowers down. And that damn hand came out of the ground. I damn near crapped my pants. I was like, holy crap. So
it works wonders. That's our favorite thing is, knowing that's coming.
but from there on, I just kept training. And then I got a job as an usher with General Cinema in Woodbridge, in the Woodbridge Theater, the old Walter Reed that General Cinema took over. And I was still training and filling in for Dad and my uncle once in the blue moon. Then comes 1978. Now I'm pretty good. I'm pretty seasoned by then. I'm threading up. I'm not having misframes or anything like that. So, and remember now, I'm running 6,000 foot reels. So I'm a little spoiled here, okay? My business agent calls me and he says to me, he goes, I got a job that I think is going to last a couple years for you. So, all right, and this time I'm making $2.50 an hour minimum wage, So I'm like, all right, I'll make a little extra money, whatever. Yeah. So he says to me, he goes, I need you to go down to the Sarah Woods Theater. And I'm like, I said, the Sarah Woods Theater. I says, isn't that the adult theater?
The porn house, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, yeah, it's the porno house. I says, well, what the heck are you sending me there for? I says, that's like one of the top paying jobs in the union. Because like I told you, Dad was secretary. So I knew all the contracts. I knew what everybody's making.
Sure, yeah, inside dig.
Yeah, and I says, I'm not even in the union yet. He goes, let me tell you. He goes, you're 19 years old. He goes, the wives don't want their husbands working in a porn theater. They don't, I'm getting all kinds of flack. I can't to work there. He goes, you're 19 years old. He goes, you probably want to sow some wild oats.
Who's going to yell at you?
Perfect. So Dad comes down with me because, the one thing they always told me, you go to a new booth, take a pad, write down switches, this, any innuendos, anything like that.
Yeah.
So we go into the booth, and what the heck you think there is? Carbon arc.
Wow.
The peerless carbons that my father had in the old State Theater.
How about it?
But I never even struck the carbons in the State Theater. I don't know nothing about carbon arc. So my father shows me. He goes, you put this, a negative rod here, positive rod. You hold the knob on the positive when you're going to strike it so it don't jump back. You hit it, you pull it back quick, you make an arc. Okay. And 20-minute reels. Now I got to be making changeovers myself every 20 minutes.
You're all over the place.
So there you go. The first night I had to work there, again, alone. The first changeover.
With essentially new equipment, yeah.
The first carbon I struck, I was sweating the bullets. And then the first changeover, I was like, please don't miss the cue mark. Please don't miss the cue mark. Please don't miss the cue mark. Well, everything went fine. And after that, I was okay. So long story short, Sarah Woods lasted from 1978 till they tore the theater down in 1990.
Wow, that long?
Yeah, that was one of the last ones. And the only reason why it got torn down? It was at the corner. It was at an intersection and the red light was causing a lot of backups. So they were going to make the highway go over to the road, and it's going to be an over-under kind of deal.
Right.
But they needed bypass lanes on the highway, and the theater sat right where the bypass lanes had to go. So eminent domain killed the theater. All right, so that was that.
Were you there for that whole run?
I was there. I did mostly probably about 25, 30 hours a week.
Wow.
Because now, as we get further into my history here, I've worked in a lot of theaters, sometimes 4 or 5 theaters in a week. I was Mr. Projection, okay?
You were all over the place. I mean, that's pretty much the life Rob's living now, too, is once somebody gets that reputation, they can pop around and get work running films all over the place, which is really great.
So now comes 1979, a year later. Business agent says to me, he goes, I need you to go to the Forum Theater in Metuchen. Okay, so they had Peerless arcs and E7 projectors like you have in the drive-in.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. So I go there, and now I'm working there, and I'm doing days at Sarah Woods, nights in the Forum. And my father decided he wanted to come to the Forum to be my relief guy because when the State Theater closed, the Forum was owned by the same owner. He took all the projectors and everything out of the State Theater and put them in the Forum Theater.
Wow.
1979 to 1983, my father and I, as father and son, worked on the same projectors.
How about that?
7-year-old boy. Yep.
Full circle. Circle.
So.
How about it?
And then I fill in once in a while. I'd still be filling in at the Jerry Lewis, too. So don't forget about that. So I had 3 theaters I was in now.
Yeah, I love that. I'm very curious about the porn theater, obviously. Was there a definitive difference between, like a legit house and the gig at the other house?
As far as projection goes, no, because it's still film.
Film's film, yeah. Yeah,
it's film is film. So, just what was on the screen was different. And I have to also tell you this, as a 19-year-old kid, where there was no VHS or online, like we have today.
Oh, yeah.
And all you had was Playboy and Penthouse. I mean, the first time you saw a movie, you saw what was going on, and your
brain exploded.
I'm like, so that's how it's done.
Wow.
The thing, but it was a thing. But no, as far as projection, it wasn't any different.
Well, how about getting films? Like, what was the situation with getting film?
There was no problem. There was no problem because that was a big industry.
It was set up like the studios, right?
Yeah. No, they had their own. They had. I remember, like, we have 20th Century Fox and Paramount and Warner Brothers and Columbia.
Yeah.
They had VCA and Gerard Damiano.
The heavy hitters, yeah.
It was legit distribution. State Film delivered your prints every week, just like they did to all the other theaters.
Yeah.
It was regular thing. What went on downstairs was different, obviously, but
sure, the crowd's different, but you don't got to worry about that.
Yeah, but it was something else. It was a double feature. Double feature. Oh, and you're gonna love this. It was a double feature, but before the main feature, we always ran a Tom and Jerry cartoon. Yeah,
gotta love it.
Before that, so that was that industry there, and then so we have the Forum Theater listed. For a couple of years, I was doing those 2 theaters, the 3 theaters. I told you I was just doing those 3. Then we fast forward now to 1984.
Right.
So 1984, I'm doing the theaters there. The Jerry Lewis was just getting ready to close. It was going to close at the end of 1984. So in March of 84, I'm out of the Forum already because the Forum was sold in the summer of 1983. So me and Dad were out of the Forum. We weren't there anymore. So all I had was Sarah Woods at the time there. I was, doing that. And Dad was filling in a little bit at Sarah Woods with me. And he was still doing the Jerry Lewis with my uncle. So now 1984, beginning of 1984, my eventual partner, Eddie, he was the business agent's son, and he was working at the Amboys Theater, which was just getting ready to become a 14-screen theater. It was 10. They were adding 2, and they were splitting 2, so it was going to become a 14 from a 10.
Yeah.
And they needed more help. So Eddie suggested to his father, "Why don't you call Mark? You know, he's you know a little old. You know, I think I'm like 10 months older than Eddie." And he said, "You know, look, we're young, and we're in the union now and everything, because I got into the union in January 1980, so I was legit." So yeah, so he calls me, and that was my first foray into platters. I started doing platters.
Oh yeah, I guess that
Yeah,
would
yeah.
have to be the case at a 14 screener.
Right. So, well, actually, let me tell you something. While it was 10, because I started going in there while it was 10, because
Yeah.
they were just finishing up the addition to add the 2, and they were also finishing up splitting 2 of the original houses.
Yeah.
They still had reel-to-reel projection with 10 screens.
Wow.
6,000-foot reels, automatic changeovers, and then they were installing the platters and taking out one machine and moving stuff around and everything.
Yeah,
So,
when did platters become like the norm? Was that around the time?
Actually, I'll tell you, platters were actually started in the 70s.
Yeah.
In the 60s, to be honest with you, because my technician at Rahway, a fellow by the name of Roger, who I met him in 1978. I met him when he came to service the Menlo Park Cinema. I was part of the floor staff, and I was like a de facto assistant manager. Right. And he came to do some work in the booth, and that's when I met him. And in fact, I still know him today. He's my projectionist when I do 70 millimeter. I'll get to that later on. Oh, but yeah. Roger was one of the projectionists at the Lowe's State in New York. And when they twinned the state, when it became State 1 and State 2, that was when they put platters in. So that was 1969.
Wow, yeah, tail end.
For platters as early as 69. They didn't really start taking off until the middle 70s, later 70s, when everybody started splitting theaters in half, you know? And then they had the 2 machines already, so you just stuck some platters in the middle and boom, you got,
You're good to go. Yeah.
So I started learning platters. So now I worked in Amboys from 1984 until it closed because of the floor collapsing in the building till 2005. 2005. That is my longest tenured theater, 21 years.
Wow, that's a run and a half.
That's my longest tenured theater.
Incredible.
And before I go on, I could tell you my longest tenured was Amboys at 21 years.
Right.
I worked at 2 General Cinema theaters in Woodbridge and in Menlo Park. Well, Edison, New Jersey, but Menlo Park. They were both twins. They were split in half to make twins. And I trained there, and I eventually did work there. So I worked in both of those from 1977 to 1991.
Yeah.
What, that's like 14 years?
That's, yeah.
And then the adult theater was 12 years. And then the Middlebrook Theater, where I met my wife, Pinky, I worked there for just shy of 10 years, just a few months shy of 10 years. They went non-union, and that's what ended that run. But those are my longest tenured theaters.
That's incredible. I mean, to have that flex and be able to have that much work available to you, is pretty amazing.
It was, it didn't start falling apart really until the later 90s. It really started going
as far as the theater landscape in the area.
Well, not so much the landscape. We had a lot of theaters, but they just didn't want the unions anymore.
Yes.
Projectionist,
Right,
so
right.
That's where it started going downhill. But thankfully, I lasted quite a while, so that was okay.
Now, being that we are, the only drive-in dedicated podcast, I'm super curious, in this legendary run that you've had, did you project at any drive-in theaters?
Once.
Really?
Just once.
Jersey Theater, I take it.
Yeah, Hazlitt.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Route 35 Drive-In. My business agent got a call. They had just gone non-union, the drive-in. It was 1984. They had just gone non-union, and I guess one of the managers didn't show up or wasn't trained or whatever. And he
Hit a
called me.
snag.
I was working with him in Amboys because we had 2 projectionists every time at Amboys. Each guy did 7 theaters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he was working, I was working. I was working one side, he was working the other side.
Yeah.
And he got this call. So he goes, listen, he goes, I know we shouldn't do this because we were going into another union's territory. Okay. We were going into the Red Bank Union's territory because they had contract dispute. So he goes, nobody will probably know you or recognize you because, I had the long hair and the whole bit. So he says, you want to go down and do the booth in Hazlitt? He goes, it's a simplex projector and a platter. So, I go, okay, fine. I went down there. So he called his son, Eddie, to fill in for me at Amboys, and I went down to the theater in Hazlitt.
Nice. Do you happen to remember, you have the steel trap mind, do you remember what the double was?
I do. Revenge of the Nerds.
Wow.
And Porky's.
What a double!
Yep.
Perfect.
And it was the middle of the summer. It was hot as hell. The booth had to be about 120 degrees.
Yeah, of course.
Because they had like a 4,000 watt xenon bulb projecting to this screen. It was like the damn screen had to be a half a mile away. Okay, because it was like, I think it was, trying to remember, I think it was like a 12 or 1,300 car drive-in. The thing was huge.
Wow.
So, yeah, but that was my one and only time. One night only. That was it.
That's amazing. I love that. Did you have the experience as a kid going to drive? Clearly, you've lived the theater life, but...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, right about 5 miles from where I am now, because I'm talking to you from my childhood home. I think I told you that story. About 5 miles from here in Island was the Plainfield Edison Indoor-Outdoor. It was a UA theater.
Yeah.
And that was like our go-to drive-in, because it was close by. That was a big drive-in. But I was at that drive-in. We went to the Hazlitt drive-in. Trying to think what other ones I think I went to the Brunswick drive-in once down on Route 1. But yeah, the Plainfield Edison was the go-to drive-in for us around here. And
everybody has their home base,
That lasted, I think, till 1985, and then that closed down. It became a shopping center. Well, what else?
Of course.
Yeah, of course, So then the 80s were pretty quiet until, 1985. I got a little bit of a gig at the General Cinema Woodbridge, the Twin, because the projectionist there, very nice guy by the name of Chuck. Chuck was his name. Nice guy, poor health. He had a massive heart attack. In fact, he had a heart attack in the booth.
Wow, while running?
And it was a Saturday. He had a heart attack in the booth, and they had to take him out. So the business agent, I was working again with my business agent. He had to call a guy that was scheduled to go to Menlo to relieve the regular projectionist there to go to Woodbridge. Now, Woodbridge had these projectors. They were 3570s. They were Norelcos. I'm sure you've heard of Norelcos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're like the Cadillac of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
He had to go there because he knew how to run them. And the guy in Menlo had to stay the rest of the day. So then Teddy says to me, he goes, tomorrow I want you to go over to Woodbridge, learn those projectors, because he goes, I'm going to need you to work there. It doesn't look good for Chuck. Okay. So the next day I go, learn the Norelcos. You had to be careful with them because...
Yeah, what was so specifically, standard, high standard about those babies?
And not only that, the shutter was on an angle.
Yeah.
And if you opened the gate while the shutter was going, you tear up the shutter blades. I don't know if you knew that. Because it was a really, it was a Cadillac, okay? So I learned them, and then I ended up working there from part-time, on and off, from 1985 till that closed in 1991. And so that was, and I was still doing Amboys. I was still doing Sarewoods, that. Then in 1988, the 2 projectionists at Menlo, the 2 old-timers, they were both in their 70s. They were retiring. So my business agent, Teddy, he put me and his son, me and Ed, in Menlo Park. So we were now in the highest grossing General Cinema Theater in New Jersey at that time.
Wow.
We were always getting exclusives and everything.
Yeah.
Now, when I worked at Amboys, those first few years from 84 on, we did a lot of 70 millimeter there. We had one theater that had 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
So I started learning how to do 70. Well, 70 is just like 35. It's just wider,
Right.
But I started doing that. But I felt comfortable because someone was always there. Like if I had a problem, the other guy was there to help you out.
Yeah, it was like the old days with your pops and your uncle.
Right. So now we're in Menlo Park. I remember in August of 1989, me and Eddie are there. Well, we were there about a little over a year. And the manager came up. He says, "Oh, we're getting a 70 millimeter." Oh God, no! And the movie was The Abyss.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, The Abyss, and we were getting it exclusive in New Jersey, 70 millimeter.
Right.
I'm like, oh God, because now you're there by yourself. It's a twin. Nobody there with you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. So.
And what's the real challenge for a projectionist? Is it the pure weight? Is it the workload of it?
It's each reel comes in its own can, number one.
Massive, yeah.
Yeah, big square cans, and they are heavy. So of course, when you have a movie like The Abyss that's 9 reels, you carry 9 reels. And this theater, the booth in the Menlo Park Cinema was on the 5th floor. Okay, we had a balcony and everything, so you had to come in the lobby, up the flight of stairs to the balcony level, then up to the 3rd level, and then we were on the 4th level. I'm sorry, because the 5th level was all the mechanicals upstairs. So yeah, it was work bringing that stuff upstairs.
It's a workout.
And then of course, splicing it together was no big deal. You just had to make sure it's not like now where it's DTS time code. You had to make sure you had the You had to make sure the magnetic stripe was on the right side, because one side was shiny, one side was dull. So you had to make sure you didn't introvert,
flip flop it. Yeah.
Other than that, the only real, I guess you want to call it nerve biter or whatever, was you had to make sure again that everything was threaded up properly, because if you destroyed a 70 millimeter print, you're talking about some big bucks.
Oh yeah.
In that time frame there, my father, when the Jerry Lewis closed, he went to work. He filled in at Menlo, and they were doing a lot of 70 millimeter at that time. They had the Empire Strikes Back in 70. They had the Jedi in 70. They had the Untouchables in 70. They had a lot of Cocoon, I remember. They had a lot of movies. So my father went there, and those 2 old guys were scared of 70. They didn't like it. They didn't want to know about it. So, of course, when they showed my father was so nervous every time he worked. In fact, I went with him a few times and sat with him if I wasn't working, just to calm him down, to make him feel at ease.
Yeah.
So finally I said to my father one day, I says, I'm watching him thread up. And I says, what in the hell are you doing? And he goes, well, this is what they showed me how to do it. I said, get out of here. Let me show you how I do it.
Wow. The tides turn.
Yeah. And I showed him, from doing it at Amboy, I showed him how to do it. And he was like, oh my God, this is so why was I so scared? I says, I don't know, but here you go.
Oh, that's
beautiful. Here's how it's done.
I love that.
Yeah. So, that was the 80s, into the 90s.
Yeah, that's and like you said, the kind of changeover with union to non-union. Can you talk a little bit about that, since your dad was so embedded in the union? What was the standards to be able to become a union projectionist, and what happened when the union broke up as far as theaters getting, unlicensed projectionists? Was it just a free for all?
Well, most of the union when I worked it, when I was in it, it was father's sons, it was relatives, it was basically who you knew.
I love that. Yes.
There were outsiders, outsiders. I mean, there was guys, there were a couple guys I knew that, they hung out in the theaters, and then they would ask, they would see the projectionists come out of the booth and, everything. And the
ask
older
questions.
The older guys were afraid of it. Like the older guys that didn't have relatives in it, they didn't want anybody. But like my business agent, my father, my uncle, a couple other projectionists that had sons in it and everything, they didn't mind, So as time went on, you'd get somebody who was really interested, and you had to really, like, I remember, because, when I was apprenticing, I had to go to all these different theaters to learn the booths. And I remember I went to the theater where the president of the local worked. And so I remember the first time. I remember you got to picture the hair down past the shoulders,
Yeah.
Okay, so, and here's the president of the union in the projection room with carbon arc lamp houses in a suit and tie running the booth.
Wow.
So picture the contrast there.
Setting the standard.
So I come into the booth, and I go, hello, sir. I don't want to say his name on the thing, but I say, hello, sir, how are you? And he goes, hello, little Pusillo, how are you? And, yeah, I'm okay. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And he goes, come here, I want to show you something. Okay, so I go over and he goes, you see that knob on the projector? I said, yes, sir. He goes, that knob right there. Yes, sir. The one that says frame. Yes, sir. I see the knob. He turns around, he looks at me and he goes, if I ever see you touch that knob, I'll break your effing arm. And I was just like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I said, the hell did I get myself into?
That'll lock in your brain.
So,
never touch a frame ever again.
Yeah. So that's how they were, though. You did not make a mistake when you made a changeover.
Yeah, to the book.
The book. It was, So then I go home, and Dad was eating dinner, just getting ready to go to the theater to work. And he goes, how'd you make out with him? I said, Dad, did okay. But I said, I says, showing me the frame knob. And he says, if I ever touch the frame knob, he's going to break my effing arm. And my father turns around and he goes, if I ever see you touch the frame knob, I'll break your effing arm. And I was just like, oh my God, I said, what the hell did I get myself into?
What is this?
That was how that school of hard knocks. I'm gonna tell you something. Sometimes people come into the booth at Rahway and ask and things. And I say to myself, if you're serious, I'll train you. But I said, you're gonna learn the way I learned. And I says, I ain't gonna pull no punches. I said, I'm gonna tell you exactly how I learned. And if I say something that offends you, well, that's just too damn bad,
That's right.
But yeah. So then everything through the 90s, I when the two theaters closed, I was working, the Menlo and everything. I went over to Blue Star. It was a fourplex. I worked there for a while. Yeah. In those early days, also, I have to say, I did work at Rahway in the late 70s, early 80s when it was on its last legs. When they had carbon arc and 20-minute reels and everything. It was on its last legs. Dollar House, the whole bit. So I did work there, and then I came back there in 2000 when they had they used to do Wednesday afternoon matinees for seniors once a month.
On 35.
On 35, yeah. And by then they had gone through some renovations to fix up the theater, and they changed the projectors. They had a Christie, not a console, but a Christie lamp house that sat on top of a projector base, and they had central projectors. So I went there, and then of course the third time. Now, the current time, I've been there since 2015 as their house projectionist.
That's amazing.
So I'm I'm there 10 years now already.
The life of a projectionist, and that is the journey that we're talking about when we talk about this podcast and allowing people to come on and shine a light on their life. Like that is quite a cinematic run. Yep. And to be able to, really be able to come back and still do it, especially at a theater that you used to project at. But, that Rahway house is gorgeous. Okay. And they're mixed use, right? They do
they
theater
do
stuff.
They do shows. They have all kinds of stuff there, But let me tell you this. Now, so you asked about when the theaters were going non-union. You asked about that. Okay. So now, in 1994, an owner that I had worked for in Linden, used to be a theater in Linden, New Jersey, and he had a theater. And I was working there one night. He had just opened up this 10-plex, the Middlebrook 10-plex, where I met my wife.
Yeah.
And so he opened it up, and he was having a dispute with our union. So he opened it up non-union. Brand new theater, he opened up non-union. So it was open, he opened it in September of 1994. And I was working in Linden and Blue Star and a couple other theaters at the time. And so June of 1995, I'm in Linden. It was a Saturday. I'll never forget it was a Saturday.
No.
In fact, this is a funny thing. The first time I told you that I started apprenticing was June 5th, 1976.
Yeah.
So my anniversary is June 5th of every year. That's why I'm in my 50th year now. So it was, I'll never forget, it was June 4th, 1995. It was a Saturday. Business agent calls me and he goes, listen, he goes, Jesse wants you down at Middlebrook tomorrow. It's a 10-plex, brand new 10-plex. It's all messed up. He goes, the non-union people messed it all up. And he said he wants you. And I said to him, I said, well, I'm supposed to work here tomorrow. So he goes, I'll fill in. I'll get somebody to fill in there. You go down to Middlebrook. So I go down to Middlebrook. You know, it's in Ocean Township, New Jersey, past Eatontown.
Sure, yeah.
About 30 miles from here. And I walk into the booth, and it was a disaster. I mean, they had the film cans. Now, 10 theaters, you know, there's a lot of film. They had the film cans piled up like a pyramid, just thrown into a pile in the middle of the booth.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and then they didn't know. They started taking lenses from one theater to another, so all the lenses were in the wrong houses. It took me about a month and a half to, you know,
get it all in order, yeah.
But I did it. Okay, so for the summer, it was a shared booth. I worked Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and their people worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And it got to be a drag real quick because when I came in Thursday, not only did I have to make up a lot of movies, but I had to put everything because everything.
There wasn't a standard anymore, or?
No, it was just everything I would try to correct over the weekend. They would mess up during the 3 days they were there.
Right.
They just didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
So finally, I called the business agent, and I said to him, this was like August now. It's August. And I said to him, I said, listen, I says, I ain't doing this job after Labor Day. I says, either he signs a contract for a full union booth or I'm out of here. I don't care if I'm unemployed. I don't care. I said, I'm out of here. Labor Day. So he called Jesse, the owner, and they signed a contract. It was a little less money on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because, you know, there wasn't much to do. So it was I think about $2 an hour less than on the weekends because, you know, the weekends were prime time, you know.
Right.
And yeah, we had a full contract, full union booth up until 2004. And I had a very nice old guy, old-time projectionist that lived in Asbury Park. I knew him. He used to have a carpet cleaning business. He would clean the rugs for General Cinema. And,
wow.
And he came up to the booth the one day. Jerry, what a wonderful man Jerry was. And he came up and he goes, I'd really like to learn how to run 10-plex. He goes, the most I ever ran was 3 theaters, a triplex. So I said, you know, and Jerry was older at the time already. I said, well, Jerry, I says, we don't have automation here. I said, we have partial automation. I said, the lights will go down and come up on their own and everything. But I said, you got to run around and start all the movies. I said, if you can keep up and run a 10-plex, you got the job. You can have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's yours. Yeah. So he came up with me on the weekends. He would, you know, run around and thread up. And I would help him out, but he would, you know, think, and he did it. He worked with me. I think the first couple of months I had a bunch of people filling in with me, and then he finally did it, and he was my partner. Right.
That's so cool.
Yep.
I love that it's such a passion job now.
Yep.
You know, folks that are into it really are into it. And
Yep.
I take it just like the Mahoning, every single booth kind of has its own like style. It's almost like jumping on a certain bike and knowing, all right, this has its quirk here, little quirk there.
Oh yeah.
You're riding.
You know, absolutely. I mean, it's like the first time you're there, first couple times, but like once you're there after a while, like getting back to the Menlo Park when I went there, they had a technician that came in and he reworked the automation for the 70 millimeter to try to pick up the cues, a different way.
Right.
And it never worked. It would never, the machine would never shut down. The changeover wouldn't close. So you'd always see end of reel 6, blah, blah,
Every
blah,
time,
blah,
yeah.
blah. Lights wouldn't come up and everything. So when me and Eddie got there, we used to have these little blue pickups that were inside the machine to pick up, you'd put the thing on the tape on a frame line to pick up the cues. And I noticed, like we noticed in the house in Amboys that had the 70, they had it mounted on a bracket above the penthouse for the magnetic penthouse. So Eddie, got one of those black boxes from, one of those black cubes from Amboys, and we got a bracket. We did it all ourselves. We put it all up the top. But now I had to go in to rewire the automation because it was all different. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Cinema 2 had the same automation. So I would go in there painstakingly. And a lot of times I stay after work on my own time. And I go into Cinema 2 and look and see, well, okay, this wire comes here and then it goes to this terminal. This goes here, goes to this terminal. And wow. I rewired the entire automation to work with that pickup because we had one of those pickups in the second theater in Cinema 2. Yeah. And don't you know, then after that, when we ran 70 millimeter, never had a problem in Menlo.
Wow, how about it? I do love that it's always this, you have to kind of make it work any way that you can, and yeah. With it being such a tactile business, it very much feels that way. So I don't want to take up all your time. I want to give Mark at least a bit to our Mark. A bit to ask some questions if he's got any. I take it they'll be super drive-in themed.
One more thing I just want to tell you because you're going to be interested. So lately now you ask with everything being like everything's digital, you probably want to ask, what do I do now besides Rahway? In 2015, when The Hateful Eight was released, I got hired by Boston Light and Sound to do 70 millimeter. I did 70 millimeter at Times Square, New York City.
Wow, come on.
I did, and 100 prints went out of that movie. Everybody ran it for 17 days, and then it went all back to Hollywood to be inspected. Out of 17 prints, only 4 of them were deemed runnable, and mine was one of the 4.
Beautiful.
And since then, I've done Dunkirk. This is all New York City. I've done Dunkirk, Death on the Nile, Murder on the Orient Express. But the one I'm most proud of, and I've done others because I've done some in the Paramus multiplex up in Paramus, New Jersey. But the one I'm most proud of is me and my partner, Rich, who's my relief guy at Rahway. We ran a movie called Phantom Thread.
Oh, yeah.
You ever heard of it? Phantom Thread.
Oh, of course. Yeah, PT.
We ran it for 13 weeks at Lincoln Square, New York City.
Wow.
5 shows a day.
That's a run, baby. Yeah. And I say we with all the friends that we have, being in the 70, once you get into that tier, they take real good care of you because you're such a asset to cinema now. There's so few people that can do it.
Right. So let me tell you, the print went back to Hollywood. They inspected it. About a month later, I got a call from the girl who was doing our payroll every week. And she says to me, she says, Mark, she goes, all of us out here, we're baffled. We don't know how you did it. How'd you do it? I said, how'd I do what? She goes, well, we checked that print of Phantom Thread from the theater. You worked 13 weeks. You had that print. And we understand you ran it 5-6 times a day. I said, yes, we did. I said, it was well over 200, maybe 300 shows. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
And she says, the print looks like the day we sent it out to you.
Wow. Come on.
Yeah. So,
high honors, my friend.
So
beautiful.
I do have a snarky side to me once in a while. So I says to her, I says, well, you know how, you did my payroll all these weeks. She said, yes, I did. I says, and I says, what did you pay me about? $42,000? She says, yeah, it was something like that. 42, 43. I said, well, that's what you get for that kind of money.
You take care of me, I take care of you.
Yeah. And then since then I've been in Paramus. I've done Oppenheimer. We did Oppenheimer for 9 weeks when that was out. We did 2001. Yeah, we've done a couple of them up in Paramus now. So, and I was called just a couple weeks ago. I'll be going back there in this summer to do the new Christopher Nolan movie in 70.
Yes, of course.
So I'll be there, So
that's great.
That's my history. That's it. I've bored
God bless you.
History.
God bless you.
How busy would you say you are doing projection now? Like how many times a month or a week are you called into service?
I only do Rahway once a month. That's it. All I do is once a month. That is it.
Until a 70 millimeter engagement comes
in.
Yeah,
until if a 70 comes out, where now there's been a lot of 70 in New York City, but unfortunately now what happened over the last few years, the unions finally, the local 306 in New York finally got a contract. They got their own people running it now.
Wow, yeah.
So Boston Light and Sound don't have to staff those theaters. So the only one I have really is Paramus. They did ask me if I wanted to do Cherry Hill this summer, but the only thing is, I'm gonna be, I just turned 67, and I don't know if I want to be driving 90 miles one way at 1 o'clock in the morning coming home to go
that's
back.
A toss.
I'm 67. I'm not saying I'm getting old or I'm getting out of touch or whatever, but when you've been doing the job for 50 years,
that's hauling a lot of miles of film, my friend.
I passed my prime about 8-9 reels back. You know what I'm saying? It's the only way I could put it.
I love it.
One thing we ask everybody is that if you could craft a Mahoning Drive-In 35 millimeter retro double feature, regardless of the financial ruin that might occur after it, what movies would you play?
I saw that question when you sent them to me a couple weeks ago, and I could craft a whole bunch.
Oh, it's the hardest question we ask, for sure.
I could craft a whole bunch. But for me personally, now I know that The Graduate was the first movie I ever ran, and yeah, that would be cool. But you know what I would really love to do? I would love to do Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein.
Oh, come on.
I just think that by the end of the night, your gut will be hurting so bad.
Oh, man.
So hard.
They still crush, We actually have, by the time this comes out, it'll be announced, we're doing a 100th birthday anniversary celebration for Mel this year with Blazing Saddles.
Really?
So, really, really excited about it.
I have to try to see, because I know you're about 90 miles away from me. Because my buddy used to manage that 8-plex that's up the road from you. Or that was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I know I used to go visit him there. So I know, and you're not too far from Jim Thorpe. I know that.
Not at all.
It's a beautiful area.
Yeah. But I just, again, it's, like my wife's going to be going back on a show on Broadway now. Her show just closed, so she's off for a couple weeks. And, I like to be home to pick her up from the bus. And, what can I say? I'm getting old. I'm just becoming an old fart. What can I tell you?
Well, I got to say, so much love and respect for this body of work and what you've given to film. And as we always say, being, one of the last 35 millimeter full-time drive-in, if it weren't for projectionists, the experience of film just would be totally lost. And if it weren't for folks like us or like UC Pack that are keeping film alive, it would be totally a past profession that people just talked about,
Yeah, I know.
So to see somebody like you still doing it's just amazing.
Now, one last thing I'm going to tell you. So when I am in my 55th year, a couple more years, in 5 more years, I'll be in my 55th year.
Yep.
I will be 71 years old. Now, not to freak you out, but when my father retired, and he had done it for 55 years, he passed away when he was 71.
Wow.
10 months after he retired.
How about that? Literally a life in film. You know?
So
That's
now
beautiful.
You're going to ask, my goal is to match Dad, catch Dad, and surpass Dad.
That's beautiful.
That's
well, we're all about traditions and celebrating special occasions and all that at the Mahoning. And I'm hoping that the stars align because we talked a little bit about needing a projectionist that happens to fall on June 5th. And if we could have you at the booth celebrating on literally your 50th anniversary, that would just be destined. So we'll see how that all goes, folks.
Let me think
Stay
about
tuned.
that. Let me think about that. That's
Yeah.
that. I mean, for one night, I can endure to drive for one night. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of, maybe you bring Pinky out. We put you up in Jim Thorpe at the Partner Hotel. You stick around with us for 2 nights. It might be the move.
She'll be working though. She'll be on her show till July 12th, so I know she'll be working. Well, maybe she'll want to take a time off. I don't know.
We'll see. So stay tuned, audience.
But like I say, that's something I might think about. And it sounds intriguing.
That's what we like. The family. We talk about it a lot here at the Mahoning, and the big plus of doing the road show and the podcast and these interviews is it really does expand our network, and to have folks like you as supporters of the Mahoning, it just strengthens our chances and ability to keep this baby going for another 77 summers.
Well, I am a firm believer that everything old is new again. So
that's right.
When digital came out, they said film was completely dead. Now you're seeing 70 millimeter coming back, and people are scrambling to put more 70 millimeter projectors into their theaters and stuff. So, everything old is new again. It's all cyclical. So
that's right. Well, thank you again for all your service, all your work, all your passion. As you said, it really energizes us as well to know that this is the industry that we're representing and the folks that are in it. It just makes it all worth it. So thank you once again, and we'll see you anytime that we're out at Union County for a film show. All right, and on that note, just like we end every single show, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.